The wind whispered through the desolate fields, dragging fine red dust across the cracked earth, like fingers trailing across a coffin lid. The sky above the Utah desert stretched endlessly, cloudless, quiet, and bruised with the colors of a dying sun. Miles of nothingness surrounded the old ranch, save for rusted barbed wire fencing and creaking wooden posts that leaned as if tired from holding back the void. The house stood alone, 2 stories of blistered white paint and warped wood. Its windows were black, vacant, like the eye sockets of a skull. One shutter flapped rhythmically in the wind, thump, thump, until it abruptly stopped, as if it was listening. A pickup truck rumbled down the dusty road, coughing up a storm of dirt behind it. Inside, Mara Ellison, 29, gripped the steering wheel with both hands. She squinted through the windshield, her brows drawn, her mouth set in a hard line. A weathered ball cap shaded her tired blue eyes, her sun-bleached hair pulled into a messy bun. Her flannel shirt was buttoned high despite the heat, an old habit from her days working livestock in Montana. She hadn't been back to Utah in over a decade. The Ellison Ranch, her grandfather's legacy, had been left to her in his will after his mysterious disappearance last winter. No body, no footprints, just a locked room and a chair overturned by the fireplace. Her mother didn't want the land. Nobody did. Locals called it cursed. Skinwalker country, they whispered at gas stations. Old blood runs under that dirt. Mara didn't believe in curses. She believed in hard work, debt, and getting out from under both. And this ranch, derelict as it was now hers. She parked near the main house, killed the engine, and stepped out. Silence hit her like a wall. No birds, no insects, not even the rustle of grass, just the dry rasp of the wind combing through the empty landscape. She turned in a slow circle, surveying the property. The barn was partially collapsed, its red paint faded to rust. A windmill stood crooked on a hill, unmoving despite the breeze. The cattle pens were empty, the soil inside dark and clawed like something had torn its way out. She felt it then, a prickle at the base of her neck, that feeling, like being watched. She spun toward the house. Nothing. Still, her boots crunched faster up the path. Inside the house. The door groaned as she pushed it open. The air was thick, musty, metallic. Cold somehow, though it was still 85 degrees outside. Dust motes danced in the slats of late afternoon light filtering through boarded windows. The living room was frozen in time. An ancient recliner, a toppled lamp, newspaper clippings yellowed and curling on the wall. She stepped in, instinctively holding her breath. Her boots left prints in the dust as she moved. On the mantel, a row of family photos sat undisturbed. She brushed one off, revealing a younger version of her grandfather, holding her at age 6. Behind them stood the ranch house, whole, proud, alive. A second photo showed him alone, but his eyes, there was something off about his eyes, something wild. The air shifted. Behind her, a door creaked. She turned. Nothing, just the kitchen, dark and empty. "Get it together," she muttered. Still, her heart was pounding. She explored the downstairs rooms. Nothing out of place, just signs of abandonment. Cracked plates, overturned chairs, a half-burned log still in the fireplace, blackened with time. Then she found the basement door. It was shut, bolted from the outside. Her grandfather never used the basement, said the foundation was bad, said it gave him headaches. She stared at the lock. Something dripped onto her shoulder. She looked up. The ceiling was dry. She looked at her shoulder. Red. Blood. Number just rust. From the old pipe overhead. But her hands were shaking now. She didn't open the basement. Not yet. Sunset. By the time she finished hauling her bags inside and setting up in the upstairs bedroom, the sun had vanished below the horizon. The sky turned the color of bruises, and the desert seemed to flatten under the growing darkness. From the window, Mara looked out over the fields. Something moved in the distance. She narrowed her eyes. A shape, on all fours, crawling, but too fast, and the limbs too long. It vanished behind a slope. She blinked, rubbed her eyes. Nothing there, just desert. Still, she shut the curtains. First night. The wind howled louder that night. The walls groaned. Pipes clanged without rhythm. The old house shifted like it was trying to breathe. Mara lay in bed, eyes wide open, the sheets bunched in her fists. She heard something. Not the wind, not the house. Footsteps, software, shuffling, just outside her door. She sat up, held her breath. The sound stopped. She crept to the door, pressed her ear against it. A whisper, too faint to understand. Then, a scratch, low, drawn out, like nails on wood. She yanked the door open. The hallway was empty. She stepped out. A gust of cold air hit her. Impossible cold, like the inside of a freezer. She turned to the stairs. Down in the darkness, at the base of the steps, a shape, human-sized, but crouched, contorted. Its head turned, snapped up to face her, too fast. Two glowing eyes blinked at her from the black, and then it was gone. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She backed into her room, locked the door, and sat with her back to it until dawn. Foreshadowing. The next morning, Mara checked the steps. No footprints, but something had carved symbols into the wood paneling near the base of the staircase. Ancient shapes, spiral patterns, a handprint with claws instead of fingers. She didn't touch them, just stared. Then she saw it, burned into the wood. You are not alone. They don't stay buried out here. Day 2. Mara stood by the corral fence, coffee steaming in her hand, the morning sun rising weakly through a thin layer of dust. The ranch had settled into a strange quiet, not peaceful, just expectant. She hadn't slept, not really, kept the light on all night, listened for footsteps, watched the door. Now in daylight, it all seemed absurd. The eyes, the scratching, just nerves, sleep deprivation, an overactive imagination, and a half-rotted house. That's all it was. She told herself that. But when she walked out to the barn, she stopped short. Something had dug up the earth behind it. 3 deep holes, wide, precise, too perfect to be animal. She crouched beside one, heart ticking faster. The soil was packed and clawed, dark like it had been turned recently, though it hadn't rained in weeks. There were bone fragments, not old, fresh, and then the smell hit her, metallic, rotten, wrong. She stumbled back, dropped her coffee. The wind picked up. Behind her, the barn doors creaked open on their own. She didn't go inside. Not yet. Later, that day she drove into town, needing supplies and distance. The general store sat at the edge of a single stoplight town, part gas station, part trading post. Dust-covered antlers hung above the door. A rusted sign read, "Wellspring Supply and Feed." Inside, an old woman stood behind the counter. She wore turquoise rings on every finger and had eyes like river stones, deep, slow-moving. "You're Ellison's girl," the woman said flatly. "Come to clean up the bones?" Mara blinked. "Excuse me?" The woman didn't smile. "That land never wanted people. Your granddad knew it. That's why he stopped going out at night. That's why he buried salt at every window." Mara didn't answer. The woman leaned closer. "Did he leave you the story about the cave?" Mara stiffened. "What cave?" The woman just shook her head. "Then you don't know anything yet." She rang up the supplies, candles, nails, extra locks. Mara left without another word. As she stepped outside, a man across the street caught her eye. He was standing perfectly still, watching her. Gaunt, with long limbs, dirt-caked boots, and a face too pale for the desert sun. His lips moved, but no sound came. Then, he vanished behind a parked truck. Mara jogged across the street. No one was there. That night, she boarded the basement door with 3 heavy planks, nailed it shut, bolted the windows, lit a candle in every room, salted the thresholds, just in case. It felt foolish, but less foolish than ignoring what was happening. She set her phone to record, just in case. That night, she dreamed. The dream. She stood outside the ranch. The land was pale, grey, silent. The sky was gone, replaced by swirling ash. She walked forward, drawn to a sound, a whisper, faint but clear. Underneath, underneath, underneath. She turned. The earth opened. A vast black mouth in the ground, yawning wide. Hands reached up, human, but wrong. Their joints bent backward, fingers curled like spider legs. One hand grabbed her ankle. She screamed, woke up gasping, and heard it again. The same whisper, not in the dream, in the house. She grabbed her phone, trembling, and replayed the night's audio. For hours, nothing. Then, a low growl, a scraping, then a whisper, Mara. She dropped the phone. Day 3. The power cut out that morning. No wind, no storm, just gone. She checked the breakers. Nothing wrong. Generator in the shed. Wouldn't start. When she went to check the tools, she found the shed door wide open, though she'd locked it the night before. Inside, every tool had been arranged into a perfect spiral on the floor. At the center, one of her grandfather's old boots. Inside the boot, a rotted deer tongue. She slammed the door and vomited in the dirt. That's when she saw him again, the pale man, watching from the tree line. But now, he was smiling. Secondary character, Levi. That evening, she drove down the canyon road to the neighboring property, a cattle ranch owned by Levi Cordell, a rugged man in his 40s who had worked with her grandfather back in the day. She hadn't seen him since she was a teenager. He opened the door slowly, a rifle slung over one shoulder. "Didn't think I'd see an Ellison back on that land," he said. "What are you doing here?" Mara told him everything. Well, most of it. He didn't laugh. He didn't call her crazy. Instead, he went quiet, then said, "There's a thing in those hills. Been here longer than we have, long as time. They call it a Skinwalker, but it's worse than the stories." "You've seen it?" she asked. He nodded once, twice, and I ain't slept easy since. That land, it feeds on fear, on blood. Your granddad kept it at bay with salt and cedar and prayer, but it's hungry now. He gave her a bag of red earth and a pouch of sage ash. "Put this in the corners of the house. Burn the ash at midnight. Don't speak its name. Don't look it in the eye." Mara wanted to laugh, but couldn't, because deep down, she already believed. That night, the encounter. She followed Levi's instructions, burned the ash, drew the red earth symbols in every room. She sat in the living room, waiting. Midnight came, and something knocked on the front door. 3 slow knocks, then silence. She stood, heart hammering. Another knock, this time from the back door. Then the basement door rattled on its hinges. She backed away, clutching the pouch of ash. And then, the walls began to whisper. Hundreds of voices, all saying the same word. Underneath. She ran to the bedroom, locked the door, held the ash close. From the window, she saw the shape again. Pale, tall, crawling on the roof of the barn like an insect. It turned its head, glowing eyes, a too wide grin. It stared at her until dawn. Psychological distress. She didn't eat the next day. Couldn't. Her hands shook. Her teeth chattered even in the sunlight. She walked the property, trying to find something, anything, that would make sense of it all. She found a well, one she didn't remember. Old, cracked, hidden behind brush. She looked inside. At the bottom, dark water and bones. Human bones. She screamed, stumbled back. Behind her, a voice, her grandfather's voice. "Mara, help me." She turned, sobbing. Nothing was there. She dropped to her knees, and the whisper returned from the well, underneath. Night 4. The wind wouldn't stop. It howled through the ranch like a scream stretched thin across miles of broken earth. The house groaned with every gust. Nails squealed in the boards. And underneath it all, Mara could hear the whispering. Not voices now, chanting. Low, ancient, wrong. She sat in the living room, the last of the sage ash burning in a cracked bowl on the table. Her eyes were bloodshot. She hadn't slept. Her hands trembled as she held her grandfather's old journal, one she'd found wedged behind the fireplace earlier that afternoon. Most of it was nonsense, paranoid scribbles, pages torn out. But a single phrase was repeated over and over. Don't open the cave. And below it, it wears the dead. The revelation. She flipped back through the journal. One page stood out, written more carefully than the rest. Buried the others where the earth cracked. That thing, it took their skins, walked like them, sounded like them. It tricked me. I let it in once, won't again. I salted the basement. It stays quiet now, but it waits. Mara's stomach turned to ice. The basement. Her grandfather hadn't disappeared. He'd sealed something in, and it had been whispering to her all this time. She dropped the journal and staggered to her feet, grabbed the crowbar from beside the couch, stared at the basement door. Still boarded, still bolted. The chanting grew louder. From underneath, she opens it. 3 nails, 6 screws, 1 breath. She pried the boards loose. Every sound echoed through the house like thunder. The final bolt slid free. The door creaked open with a long, exhausted sigh. Blackness spilled up the stairs, thick, suffocating, alive. She held a flashlight in one hand, the crowbar in the other, and descended. The basement. The air changed instantly, heavier, colder, like stepping into another world. The beam of her flashlight shook across mildewed walls. Cobwebs stretched like veins. The smell, copper, rot, wet stone, made her gag. And then she saw the circle, drawn in ash and blood, symbols scrawled around it. At the center, a pile of skin, human, sloughed, folded like old clothing. Mara staggered back. Her foot hit something, a jawbone. Her flashlight swung wildly and landed on the far wall, where someone had carved dozens of names, all scratched out, except one, Mara. Her breath caught. A whisper slithered through the dark. You're ready now. She turned and saw herself. The entity. It stood just outside the circle, her exact face, but not her. Its eyes were too wide, too still, too knowing. Its mouth curled, not in a smile, but in a stretch, as though trying to remember how to mimic one. It stepped forward. The skin on its neck rippled, like something moved beneath it. Mara raised the crowbar, shaking. What the fuck are you? It cocked its head. I'm what you were meant to be. You called me, brought me back. All you had to do was open the door. Its voice was hers, but doubled, layered with other tones. Male, female, animal. It stepped closer. You wear the name of the blood that fed me, and now you'll wear me. The chase Mara ran. Up the stairs, heart in her throat, lungs burning. The thing followed, its limbs stretching, contorting, crawling. It screeched, a sound like antlers snapping and metal tearing. She made it to the kitchen, slammed the door, jammed a chair under the handle. Boom, boom, boom. It slammed into the door, over and over. Mara grabbed the gas can from under the sink, poured it around the baseboards, lit a match. Whoomph! Flames roared up the walls. The thing shrieked, furious, from behind the door. She bolted through the front, out into the dark. The final revelation. She ran to the barn, needed weapons, shelter, anything. She burst through the doors, stopped dead. Every animal carcass that had ever gone missing hung from the rafters, stripped, worn like costumes, some with human hands sewn in, and at the back of the barn, in a shallow pit, her grandfather's remains. But something else was there too, An opening in the earth. A cave. The one from her dream. The one the journal warned her about. She should have turned away, but it whispered, "You want the truth? Come see." She stepped inside. Inside the cave, the walls pulsed with veins of black stone. The air was thick, buzzing with low, guttural tones like a growl stuck in slow motion. At the center of the cave, an altar made of bone and antlers. On it lay a bundle wrapped in old flannel. Mara approached, pulled it open. Her grandfather's face, but not his body. Just the face, dried, empty, a mask. Behind her, something moved. She turned. The entity stood at the mouth of the cave, now 8 feet tall, hunched, covered in skins, stitched together like patchwork. Antlers curved from its back, eyes like black mirrors. "You came back," it said, "just like the others." She couldn't speak, couldn't move. "You think you're real? You think you are one?" It reached out, stroking the air before her. "But you were carved from this earth, like me, like them. You are not Mara, you are the next." Then it grinned, and its jaw unhinged. Life-threatening moment. She ran, blind, screaming, scrambling up the rocks, gasping for air. It chased her, claws raking stone, faster than any human. She made it out into the open just as lightning split the sky. Rain came, sudden, fierce. The land hissed like it was burning. She turned, threw the gas can she'd grabbed from the barn, lit it. The flames caught the rain in steam. The creature screamed, shrieked with the voice of every person it had ever worn. The fire rose, the earth cracked, the cave collapsed, buried it beneath. For now, the skin remembers. Morning after the fire. The sky was bone white by morning, overcast and still. The ranch smoldered behind Mara, thick smoke curling into the silent sky. Ash clung to her skin. Her hands were blackened, lips cracked, eyes swollen from smoke and terror. But she was alive. The cave was buried. The creature, whatever it was, gone. She'd survived. She stood on the edge of the ridge, wrapped in her grandfather's old coat, staring at the collapsed earth where the cave had once been. A scorched scar now. A grave. And yet, she couldn't stop shaking, because the wind hadn't stopped whispering. Back in town, Sheriff Grant didn't believe her. Not fully. But he saw the bruises, the blood, the fire damage, the torn barn. He called it trauma, stress, delusion brought on by isolation. They called in the fire report. She said nothing about the faces, or the chanting, or the thing that looked like her. She left that in the cave, or tried to. She stayed at a cheap motel on the edge of town for 3 days. Didn't eat much, barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard it. "You're ready now." The hallucination night. 3 in the motel. Mara jolted awake, gasping. The dream again. The thing in the mirror. Her reflection, grinning, skin sloughing off like wet cloth, whispering, "Let me wear you." She stumbled to the bathroom, splashed water on her face, looked up. Her reflection didn't move. It stared at her, blinking slowly, and then it smiled. Mara screamed, shoved the mirror with both hands. It shattered. Blood poured down her palms. But when she looked again, her reflection was normal. Doubt creeps in. She told herself it was trauma. The psychologist she saw at the urgent care agreed. "Extreme stress can cause hallucinations," he said. "You've been through something horrible. You need rest. Time." But rest never came. And time only deepened the wrongness. Because every now and then, she'd catch herself moving before she meant to. Her hand twitching toward the window before she looked out. Her head turning at sounds she hadn't registered. And sometimes, in her dreams, she'd see herself. Not as she was, but as it. 1 week later, the ranch was still abandoned. Authorities had sealed it off pending investigation. But something pulled her back, some unseen thread beneath her skin. She drove out late, just before dusk, parked on the ridge, stared at the land, blackened, broken, still. And yet, she wasn't alone. Not truly. She stepped out of the car, walked to the site of the cave. The dirt was still warm. The wind had picked up, and it was whispering again. Not words this time. Breathing, like something waiting beneath, like something remembering her. The last visitor. She wasn't the only one who'd come. A boy, no older than 10, stood near the old fence line, staring down at the property. She blinked, startled, walked over. "You okay, kid?" He didn't look at her, just whispered, "My uncle used to live out here." She froze. "Who's your uncle?" The boy didn't answer. She crouched gently. "Hey, you shouldn't be here alone." He turned to her slowly and smiled, too wide, too still. Her smile. "Neither should you," he said in her voice. And then the skin on his face quivered, like something crawled just beneath. She stumbled back, but the boy was already gone. Back in town, again. She tried to leave the next morning, packed her things, drove toward the highway. Didn't make it 10 miles before the car died. No warning. Flat tires, engine smoking. Her phone had no signal. She sat on the shoulder, hands tight on the wheel, breath fogging the glass. Then she looked in the rearview mirror and saw someone in the back seat. Herself, eyes black, skin pale and wet, smiling. She spun around. The seat was empty. Final night. She checked into a new motel, locked the door, blocked the windows, lit sage, drew salt lines across the doors, the windowsills, the bathroom. Sat in the corner with her grandfather's journal and a baseball bat. Waited. The wind didn't blow that night, but the whispers came anyway. From inside the walls, inside her thoughts. And then she heard it. Not aloud, but inside her mind, like a thought she didn't have. "I wore your grandfather. I wore your mother. You think you're real?" She gripped the bat, screamed at the empty room. "I'm not you!" The mirror on the dresser cracked down the middle, a single word etched across the glass. Yet. The ending, final scene. 3 months later. A new family bought the ranch, fixed the barn, painted the house. They brought a dog, 2 children. Neighbors say they keep to themselves, mostly, except for the daughter. She doesn't talk much, but sometimes she stares too long in the mirror. Sometimes her reflection blinks twice. Sometimes she hums at night, in a voice not quite hers. And in town, folks whisper that Mara left for the city, started fresh, maybe changed her name, but nobody's really sure. The old motel clerk swears she saw her last week, but something was off. Her eyes were wrong, and she didn't blink. The sheriff still drives past the ranch now and then, just to check, but he never stops, not anymore, because every time he looks at the window upstairs, he sees her, Mara, staring out, grinning, and she hasn't aged a day.